more. For India, joining me now is Democratic Congressman Khanna of California, also the vice chair of the Congressional India Caucus. Congressman, thank you for being with me. Of course, you are the vice chair of the India Caucus, but this is also really personal for you. You and your wife have family members, loved ones in India right now. Are they okay, and what do they need from us?
I mean, thanks for asking. They are safe, but I also represent a district with thousands of Indian Americans, and if you talk to them, the situation in India is just horrific and dire. Almost everyone knows a family that has been touched by this. The hospitals are being overrun. They don't have oxygen. And as the reporter commented, the numbers are far, far worse than what is being reported, both the deaths and the cases. I applaud President Biden for making a commitment to get oxygen. That is the most urgent need, to get PPE, to get medical help. But we also ultimately need to get vaccines to India. The president has said that he will release the AstraZeneca, which Americans aren't going to use after it's deemed safe. But more important is Pfizer and Moderna need to license the vaccine recipe to allow India and other countries to manufacture it.
Okay, I want to get to the intellectual property in a moment. It's a very important point you make, but just a question about the Biden administration, if they're doing enough at this point in time. According to the White House yesterday, it could be up to 2 months before those 60 million AstraZeneca doses are released to other countries. That would include India. Can India wait that long? Because you're calling for the U.S. to send military support in.
Well, I think what's most urgent is military support to help the patients who are sick, and that is oxygen, that is PPE. Secretary Blinken has done a tremendous job. He had a call yesterday with over 100 tech leaders talking about mobilizing Google, a lot of the philanthropists, of how we get aid in most quickly. So that is the most immediate need. I do think the administration is on top of it. The longer-term issue, though, is how we get vaccines and vaccine development, and that gets to the intellectual property issue.
And the CEO of Google will join us on the show tomorrow to talk about exactly that point. But to your point on intellectual property sharing, 6 months ago, India asked the World Trade Organization to waive basically the protection of intellectual property when it comes to COVID vaccines. All of the companies that you mentioned here in the United States producing them have opposed that waiver, as has, to this point, the Biden administration has not voted to support waiving intellectual property protection on this. Joseph Stiglitz, the Nobel laureate, writes, "Any delay in ensuring the greatest availability of vaccine and therapeutics is morally wrong and foolish." Is he right? And is President Biden wrong not to push to end that IP protection?
Poppy, thank you for raising this. Joseph Stiglitz is absolutely right. The Pope is right. This is a humanitarian issue. Let's just look at the facts. The United States government gave a $2 billion guarantee to Pfizer to purchase the vaccines. If it weren't for that, Pfizer would never have been able to do what they did. Our NIH gave the IP that allowed Moderna to develop the vaccine. What we're now saying is that they should share the vaccine recipe with over 100 countries who want to do the manufacturing. They're willing to do the manufacturing themselves. They need to have contract manufacturing. Pfizer would still get paid. Moderna would still get paid. But it is just wrong, morally wrong, strategically wrong for them not to share the vaccine recipe, which was developed with U.S. taxpayer support.
Have you talked to the White House? Do you know why the Biden administration is not supportive of that at this point?
I do know there are very senior people in the administration who are supportive of it. We are making the case to the White House. And my hope is that the president would at least call the Pfizer CEO and say, look, your long-term strategy in India, a huge market, just in your economic interest, at least waive it for 6 months or a year. Allow India to develop that vaccine. And this is good in your own long-term interest. It's good for the United States in our interest with the relationship with India and the rest of the world.
As you know, Bill Gates was asked about this in an interview yesterday, and he said his concern, he doesn't think it's a good idea to share that IP, and his concern is safety. He brought up safety concerns, and he said you have to do a trial. Every manufacturing process needs to be looked at in a very careful way. You responded to him with a proposed solution on Twitter. Could you share that with our viewers?
I rarely think Bill Gates is wrong, but this is a case I hope he will engage. And the point that Bill Gates made about manufacturing capacity being restricted is absolutely correct. But what I said is, why not have a global fund, $25 billion, to help with manufacturing capacity, and then allow the vaccine recipes to be shared? And you're not going to have a lack of quality control. I think it's patronizing to say that 100 other nations can't have a regulatory process to make sure manufacturing is safe. They can, and the World Health Organization can. No one is asking Pfizer to manufacture these vaccines. No one is saying they need to do it for free. It's important to understand they will get paid. They will be able to sell it. The reason they're not doing it would be pure greed. It would be that they want to distribute everything and make obscene profits. That's going to hurt Americans, because as the vaccine spreads around the world, it puts us at risk in this country.
Very quickly, the Washington Post editorial board is calling out the Modi government in India for forcing or trying to force companies, including Facebook and Twitter, to take down critical posts of their handling of the pandemic. And I wonder if you believe the Biden administration should speak out on that to the Indian government at this point, because the Washington Post editorial board says it's India's attempt to suppress speech that cannot be ignored and is dangerous to public health.
The Washington Post editorial is exactly right. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg and Dorsey, frankly, should comply in taking down speech. I get criticized every time on Twitter. I mean, probably after this interview, there are 50 critical tweets. Should I go complaining to Mark Zuckerberg to take it down? That's absurd. It's a violation of speech, and we should raise that as a universal human right. People should have the right to criticize their government.
Congressman Khanna, thank you. And we're thinking about all of your family members and everyone over there suffering in this tragedy across India. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Poppy, for covering this.
Of course. Jim.